So to actually deploy our WebLogic domain and start up an admin server, have a look at the Readme.md file. You can find this file in the same directory as the sample domain directory. Okay, so view the Readme.md file. And this file contains very important information about what some default values are for various configuration settings within WebLogic, such as the admin password, admin username. And you can see here that the default username is WebLogic, and that unless you specify a password, WebLogic will by default generate a password for the admin user. So this is important information to look up. You can also see the different admin port. So have a look at the readme.md file. And then down at the bottom here, we can see that there's instructions on how to build it. We just used the helper build.sh script. But beneath that are all the commands that are needed to start up the admin server and spin up managed servers as well. So the way Docker works, one of the paradigms for Docker is that you have one running application per container. So when we want to launch the admin server, we spin up a Docker container. When we want to start up a managed server, we spin up another container. So if you've got an environment where you've got an admin server and a WebLogic cluster, each WebLogic server in your environment would essentially be a standalone running Docker container, and they're all linked together using the networking that's native to the Docker engine. So to start the admin server, I'm going to use this command. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire command, but I'm not going to run everything here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this command. Okay. And then I'm going to put on my command line. Not all of these parameters are required, but I will walk through all of them and let you know. So the -d means we're going to run this container in the background. The -n --name parameter specifies the name of the container instance. The host name and -p define networking host name and port forwarding for the container. So WebLogic server inside of the Docker container is going to run on 7001. However, we need to allow traffic into that container. And so we have the port map from the Docker host, which is your workstation or server, to WebLogic running inside of a container. So the first port number here is the port number that'll be used on your Docker host. And then the second port number here is the port number for the WebLogic server running inside the container. And then this -env file loads some default environment configuration settings for the domain. And you can actually go look at this file to see what properties are being set. And then another important value here is this -e means environment variable. So when the container starts up to start running the admin server, an environment variable will be used to set the password for the admin user. And that's what this is doing right here. So we're going to set our admin password to WebLogic 123. Now, if we don't specify this environment variable, WebLogic will automatically generate one for us, which is certainly more secure than specifying it on the command line like we're doing here. The -v parameter here specifies a volume mount. We don't need to do that, so I'm going to take care and get rid of this. So, and if you want to learn more about volume mounts, then I recommend going over to the Docker website and reading up on that, but it's not required for this environment. And the last parameter here is the name of the image that we want to run, and that is the 12213 image. So you can see that this value maps to this image in our local repository. So once you have these parameters defined, to go ahead and run. And what's returned is a hash for the running container. So if we do a Docker PS, we can see that we have this container that's running, it's up and running, and we can see what ports are open within the container and what traffic is being allowed in from outside the container. And that's this port forwarding rule right here. To see if the container is actually up and running, meaning did WebLogic actually start, you can do a Docker logs and then pass in the name of the container. oops, got to pass in the container ID. And we can do a logs-f as if we're tailing. And what we're looking for here is that the WebLogic server's up and running. So that's fantastic. So what we've just done is in the previous videos, we have created all the images. We've built all the images that were needed to deploy WebLogic. Now we've just deployed an admin server using the WebLogic domain image that we created earlier. So we've got our server up and running on port 7001. I am going to bring up my browser. And in a new tab, I'm going to access my admin console. Now, my Docker host, so the host name is just the host name of the Docker host that you're using. So mine happens to be Veyron, and the port number 7001/console. Now, if you're running all this locally on your computer, then you won't. Your host name will most likely be localhost in that case. And then WebLogic is the default username. And the password was what I specified on the command line in that environment variable, and that was WebLogic123. And here it is. This is our WebLogic admin server that we just deployed using WebLogic. So this may have seemed like a lot of work to get WebLogic up and running, but think of this. I only needed to build those Docker images one time. Now, if I make a configuration change to the WebLogic domain, then I would want to roll that back up into the Docker file for the WebLogic domain image. But for everybody else that comes along that needs a WebLogic environment, whether it's a development environment or as part of a CI/CD process where you're spinning up environments and quickly tearing them down, you can continue to reuse the domain image to do that. So no more manual installation of WebLogic. No more manual domain creation. Your developers don't need to be WebLogic experts. They can just simply run Docker run and then specify the domain image, and they're off and running. And that's it. So if you want to learn more about WebLogic administration, development, and more detailed use cases for using Docker, head on over to learnweblogiconline.com or check out a link to the site below. We have a lot of training on our website that you'll find helpful and useful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me via the website or comment below. Thank you very much.